story was told, it comes out of England, about a man who was kind of gruffy. He always got his way, and just in the whole style that he would try to overpower people and all sorts of things like that. And he was going out to the countryside to a meeting that he needed to be present, and he got lost. And so he's looking around to see, well, can I figure out how to get out of this and find out where I'm supposed to be? And he finally saw a little boy, probably 7, 8 years old, walking down the side of the road, and he stopped the car and said, "Boy, which way is it to Dover?" The little boy looked at him and said, "I don't know." A little embarrassed. He didn't know that, but he just didn't know. And then the man said, "Well, how far is it to Brighton?" The boy said, I don't know. And by this time, this man is really, really angry that he can't find the directions where he is supposed to go. And so finally, is there anybody around here that can give me directions? Just shouting. And the little boy said, I can't help you. And then the man said, "Well, you don't know very much, do you?" The little boy smiled. He just smiled. And he could see his house up on the hill and the lights in the early evening and his siblings playing in the front yard. And the little boy said, "No, I don't know very much, but I'm not lost." Really interesting. I think when I was looking at the readings today that Elijah probably felt lost. Here he is doing the Lord's work, and now the king and queen want to put him to death. Other prophets want to put him to death, and he's running away in fear. I can see feeling lost. And so God said, "Well, just go into this cave and I'll come by." And have all these things, the mighty things, the earthquake and the fire and the wind. But it wasn't until Elijah heard that tiny, simple whisper. He does this. He takes his cloak and he covers his face. Because in those days, they thought if you would actually see God, you would die. This was a kind of reference. And even today, when Jews wear the yarmulkes, they do that to keep a distance between themselves and God. That's the symbol there. And he probably didn't feel so lost after that God somehow came to him. And we really always kind of be thinking about that. And as we come to the gospel today, it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so the darkest part of the night. And they're on the stormy sea. And it probably did look like a ghost. I mean, to their eyesight, Jesus looked, just like a regular human being. He didn't glow in the dark or anything like that. But here he is, nobody can do that. Nobody can walk on water. But Jesus was doing that. And so Peter, the brash one, he's the guy that always kind of steps up there saying, "Well, if you want me to, I will." And he starts off the right path. He starts off walking on the water. And then as soon as he started to pay attention to the storm, the waves, to the wind, that's when he lost his courage. And he just started to, now he's grasping, "Catch me, catch me." And that happens over and over again in our lives. We pay too much attention to the troubles of our life, the troubles of the world. Yes, we should pay some attention to that, obviously. But we get way out of sorts on these things. And we start paying too much attention to that instead of to the Lord. St. Ambrose, that wonderful father of the church, wrote, "If I tried by myself to swim across the ocean of the world, the waves would certainly engulf me. If in order to survive, I must go aboard a ship made of wood. This wood is the wood of the cross. Of course, even on a broad ship, there will be dangers, tempests, and problems, for the sea is part of the world. But God will help me remember on board the ship and arrive safely at the harbor of eternity." See, in the early church, knowing the scriptures, when they said they put Jesus and the apostles in the boat, it's code, because that's a symbol of the church, the bark of Peter. And in many old churches, you will see a ship, and even the front of our church has almost like a bow of a ship. The bark of Peter, the church. What happens is when we get too enmeshed in our lives and our difficulties, we lose sight of that. And then we start to get afraid. There is no need to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid. Because if we keep our eyes on Christ, we will be able to walk on water. But we have to keep our eyes on Christ. That's number one. And that's when we can really see his grace, and where we can dispel the fear that we sometimes have in our lives. But to keep our eye on Christ, there's a few things we can do to help us do that. First of all, spend time in prayer before the Eucharist. Not just coming to Mass. That's a good thing to come to Mass. But just to take time. Now, you don't have to go to the chapel for an hour. Maybe for 5 minutes. Spend some time with Christ. You don't have to have a rosary to pray at that. You don't have to have a book. You can just sit in front of the body, blood, soul, and divinity, the second person of the Trinity, right there in our chapel. You're gazing at God. Just for a while. And maybe not say any prayers at all. Just listen. Just listen. And you just make it a habit. On the way to school, the way to work, coming home, maybe later in the evening, all kinds of things. If you can come in the middle of the day, that's fine too. We have access here, which is a beautiful thing in the Eucharist. So that's number one. We have to do more prayer in front of the Eucharist, not just in the woods or anything like that. Nothing wrong with praying in the woods, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Secondly, we can get more knowledgeable about the Scriptures. We say, well, I kind of know what the Bible is, but how often do you really study the liturgy? The Scriptures. We have several Bible studies here during the year. In fact, we have a Thursday morning, Thursday night. We have a Bible study this weekend, Friday and Saturday, kind of an overview of the Bible. We have many wonderful things that we can do. And there's several ones on the internet as well, to know the Scriptures. St. Jerome said, the ignorance of Scripture is ignorance of Jesus. Well, Monsignor, I know all I need to know about the Scriptures. Boulder Dash, okay? Boulder Dash. That's just not Just not true. It's a lifetime of exploring the Scriptures. And thirdly, we can gaze upon Christ by serving our brothers and sisters in need. That's what Jesus did. And when we do that for the sake of Jesus, not because it's family, that's okay, but do it for the sake of Christ, to be an example of Jesus. Lift it up. Not just, well, it's my family, I've got to do it. That's just duty. Give it beauty. Give it a heavenly meaning. And stretch out like that. And when we can live like that, when we receive Jesus himself, today he's not going to walk on water. Today Jesus will be in the palm of your hand or the tip of your tongue. The same one who walked on water, he will be right inside your very body. When we take that deep to heart, we will never be lost.